I was coming down the hills. I was going pretty fast, 30, 40 miles per hour on the bicycle with no protection, no cushion, falling asleep.
Hey, got something really cool I wanted to run by and let you know what's going on. So I'm starting a group that will start taking a deep dive into each one of these episodes. So we'll collectively come together and talk about the shows, talk about the guests. I'll be bringing back some of the guests to do some Q&A sessions and really take a further dive into their story, their journey, the episode, talk about, maybe some of the things you wish I would have asked on the episodes, do some Q&A sessions and the like. As a friend put it to me, it's really like a book club, but for the podcast. So a couple times a week, we'll go in, we'll break down the favorite shows of the week, and have cool discussions around everything that we've heard, we've learned, and want to know about their journey. Some of these guests will come in and they'll teach part of what makes them awesome at what they do. And then, as always, I'll be providing regular value and content in this group. It's really cool because this only is going to cost $5 a month to join this group. And you'll be able to come in, interact with everybody else in there. So I'll put a link right in the show notes for this that you can jump in, come have a conversation with us, and we will really deep dive into each one of these episodes and help us all rise up together. Thanks for tuning in, guys. It's going to be a great show today. Having the show wasn't something I started out to do. But the day I found out somebody wanted to really sponsor the show was a really, really cool experience. So, guys, I want you to take some time to go check out Point Blank Safety Services and their new nonprofit, Blue Family Fund. These guys are doing some really, really cool things. And Stacy McGovern, who's the CEO over there, has been a dear friend, and she was a guest on the show. But these guys are literally taking, the off-duty officers and putting them out in security guard role. And here's what's cool about it is, as they're protecting our lives, they don't make a whole lot of money in that regard. No first responders are paid for the value they provide for our safety and our health and taking care of us. So these guys, Stacy and her team over at Point Blank Safety Services have really found a cool way to give back to these officers by helping them provide an additional income so they can continue to support and protect us. So do me a favor, guys. Seriously, go check out pointblanksafety.com and then go look at their nonprofit, which is Blue Family Fund. Now, this nonprofit was created because of the success of Point Blank Safety Services. They wanted to give back to the families of fallen officers and be able to give scholarships away to the families of current, police officers. So do me a favor. It would mean the world to me if you would go out and help support this show by supporting Point Blank Safety Services and their nonprofit Blue Family Fund. Just tell them Donnie has sent you. You heard it on Donnie Success Champions, and Stacy will take a tremendous and amazing care of you. Thanks, guys. All right, guys, I'm bringing you a very special episode. Donnie Ying is coming on to share his story about his journey across America on the back of a bike. He's doing it to raise awareness for suicide victims and trying to help prevent some of the mental diseases in our country. He's just a few miles away from being in his destination in Times Square, so we want to make sure we got this out to you guys so you could hear about his journey while he's still on the track. So enjoy this episode of me and Donnie talking about his trek across America. All right, guys, bringing you another fun episode. I'm your host, Donnie Boivin, and today I'm bringing in Donnie Ying. And Donnie has got a really, really, really cool story and a really cool project and what he's working on. So, Donnie, welcome to the show, my friend. Please share with us your journey.
Sounds good. So thank you so much for having me on the show. And I am a Marine veteran. I'm riding my bicycle from San Francisco to Times Square to raise awareness for mental health struggles and suicide while promoting hope and inspiration in life. And this whole thing started off as my personal problem in my own life back in April and May. This whole story goes back actually very far. I have realized that, I've always been searching for something. I wasn't quite sure exactly what I was looking for. So in the past 10, 20 years as an adult, I've been working, feeding bank account, putting food on the table, realizing that my soul was starving to death. And so when April and May, things fell apart with my work, personal relationship, business, I knew, 36 years I've been the way that I've been. How has that served me? And quite honestly, I have to look back. It hasn't really served me. I know that I needed major, major changes in my life, in personal relationship, in business, in work. But I quite honestly did not know what they look like. I didn't know. And so at that time, I had a commitment to go to one of Tony Robbins' events, Unleash the Power Within, in Chicago in July. I already booked the flight and all that. And I thought to myself, well, I think I have an opportunity. Why don't I do something that I would never do in my entire life? This is an opportunity. And I started off thinking that, okay, maybe I'll just cancel my flight. Maybe if I can walk from Sacramento to Chicago, what does that look like? Right? Kind of like Forrest Gump. Well, little did I know, I do not have an ability to walk long distance because Memorial Day Sunday, I canceled my flight. On Memorial Day Monday, I attempted a 40 miles walk dedicated for veteran suicide awareness. At mile 7, my right leg was hurting. At mile 18, oh my gosh, I could barely lift up my right legs just to throw myself into a car when someone come by to pick me up. Couldn't even get through half of that 40 miles. So I quickly realized walking 40 miles for 40 days was not an option. But I was determined to do something that I would never do in my entire life. And quite honestly, I don't even enjoy sweating. So I said, okay, what are my options? That's where cycling came into the picture.
Let me jump in here 1 second. So, all right, you get an invite to a Tony Robbins event, right? And,
yes.
and to raise awareness, instead of just flying to the event, you get the crazy idea that you're going to walk this thing.
I said, what would it look like if I just walk it? I mean, why not? I could stay at where I was in Sacramento and pretend everything is okay, sweep everything underneath the rug, and just keep going through the motion, right? And how has that served me 36 years? So there was an opportunity for my crazy mind to think, why don't I do something crazy that I would never do in my entire life? And that's kind of the genesis of this whole thing. Yeah.
That's pretty wild. Because you and I both did enough humping and hiking in the Marine Corps that the thought of walking across America would not be something that was going to pop in my head as a thing to do.
Yeah.
I don't know. Maybe if even riding a bike, dude, I would have done it tandem or something. Let somebody else push the pedals.
Exactly. And quite honestly, even when I was in the Marines, I did not enjoy running. Running was one of those things that everybody's running. You don't have a choice. You run it.
Yes.
Right? But it was not something that I desire every morning. Oh, I cannot wait to run a couple miles. Or with the officers leading, I think that's all they do. Officers, they just run all day. They're fast. They can run all day. Right? I had none of that desire ever. However, I made that decision to do something that I would never do. And so on Memorial Day, I canceled my flight. On June 2nd, the following Saturday, I bought a bicycle. And the following Saturday, I was on Amtrak from Sacramento to Denver. And then the following Friday, I was on the saddle going from Denver to Fort Morgan to Sterling to Julesburg on to Chicago.
So wait a minute. And, up until this point, you didn't even own a bike?
No. I don't exercise, man. I don't.
Well, that's typical Marine, right? We get out and we're like, okay, I did all the exercise in my life. You know.
Yeah. I don't enjoy sweating. I don't. I really don't. I enjoy my temperature control environment very much so.
So at least tell me that
Yeah.
you got a nice bike and not some sort of Walmart $100 special.
Yeah. So I started looking at this whole thing. I went to the Track Bicycle store in Sacramento, and they have amazing group of people. They helped me pick out on the bike and all the stuff that I possibly need for a track like this. And they didn't know that I was going to keep riding. So they got me the bicycle Track 520. It was a great bike. Cost a lot of money, actually. Still on the credit card, and you paid that off at some point. But that got me going. And 32 days later, 1,300 miles later, I got to Chicago. And I had really experienced life in 30 days. And what I mean by that, a ride like this is very physically and mentally challenging and demanding. And also another thing that I realized is everything that I was writing for, at that time, I was writing for veteran suicide awareness. And we started talking about mental health and suicide awareness. And I realized that there is a huge stigma going around in our big environment, in our culture. And I realized how hard has it been for other people. And using myself as an example, I remember one day I was riding from Rayton, Iowa into Des Moines, Iowa. I was falling asleep on the wheel, going through rolling hills. It was exhausting. And that was maybe halfway through on my track. And I had to ask myself, why am I not taking some rest? Why am I not asking for help? Was it really my ego? Was it really my pride that I'm not willing to ask for help? And at the end of the day, I'm here trying to raise awareness for suicide prevention and awareness. At what expense am I going to kill myself over it? Right? Because I remember I was coming down the hills. I was going pretty fast, 30, 40 miles per hour on the bicycle with no protection, no cushion, falling asleep. And that was something that I really have to ask myself, what am I doing? I'm writing to raise this awareness. What do I have to prove? And I'm doing this right at what expense? Right? Because this really helped me clarify a lot of things. For example, I've seen a lot of people who struggle mentally. They have that stigma that we're coming from male in our culture and also us coming from the uniform, right? We're taught to be strong. By the way, I'm not suggesting that we go soft, but what I mean by that when it comes to raising awareness is there's a place and time for everything. Meaning when we're on the call, when we're in the line of duty, we take care of business. We take care of each other who is next to us, right? And we come home. But if we're really not in the position to serve, maybe it takes more bravery and courage and strength and say, you know what, I need to be pulled out of the play, right? Because if I don't, I could put everybody else at risk, right? And so that's really what we're talking about. At the end of the day, we have to be very open and honest with ourselves. What is our capacity, right? I will be the first to say pushing ourselves is good, right? I've pushed myself in the last 4 months on the bicycle. That's great. And I love that about people are improving. But at what point do we draw the line, right? A lot of people really struggle when I was writing and learning about all these veterans, first responders, fire services, law enforcement. They lose so many people to suicide in the line of duty. It's outrageous. And my curiosity is why? What happened? Right? There's obviously some kind of trauma. There's definitely something that they have experienced that I would probably never understand because I did not go through what they went through. But with all that trauma that they have experienced, what led them to killing themselves? Right? Is it that perhaps that we're not, a lot of time we're not teaching ourselves on taking better care of ourselves, right? A lot of us who are in the uniform, we're taught to give. We give a lot. We give, and give. And I hate to say, some of us, it really breaks my heart that they have left themselves behind, right? Or they don't know how to cope, and the only thing they know how to cope is from what they see in the environment around them, from the people around them, meaning, let's go grab a drink after the shift. Okay, I mean, have we not heard that a lot? I'm sure you have.
Oh, yeah.
Right, Donnie?
Oh,
okay,
yeah.
So drink turning to two turning to four. Next thing you know, 1 day a week turning to 2 days a week turning to every single day, right? From going once a day into the bar, now we're going multiple times to drink, and then goes into, I need to get a drink so I can go to work. I mean, am I off base or am I onto something?
No. Here's what's interesting about this whole thing, and I think you're spot on, is, what was running through my head is when you're sitting on the back of a bike and you're literally Forrest Gump but on the back of a bike across America.
Yeah.
San Francisco going all the way to Times Square, right? Have a lot of time to be stuck with your own thoughts. And, a lot of people don't like what they find there. But for you, you've been focused heavily on how do I raise awareness? What is going on in the minds of so many first responders and veterans taking their lives? And really taking a philosophical approach at looking all this, which is pretty amazing. I'm really at this point curious what you've discovered about yourself when you've been in those thought processes, because I know me, man, if I'm sitting that long on a bike, which that would never happen, but I just know that there would be a lot of inner looking, if you will. What are some of the things you've learned so far on the journey?
I will have to say you're absolutely correct. I had a lot of opportunity to be in my own head. And sometimes it's actually quite dangerous because I'm still a human. I still have negative thoughts in my head. And sometimes I can go down a rabbit hole. And what I've realized is, I listen to some Audible books while I'm on the ride, and I'm still learning, continue learning about this whole thing, is what I focus on, I expend. Meaning I can think about things that are not good, or I can think about stuff that are important. And whatever I think about, they start amplifying a lot, right? And so going back, learning about myself, a lot of time I know it's a little bit more philosophical, but at the same time, what I realize is that it's challenging because we don't spend enough time to think about these things, and we're just going through the motions. We're not looking for clarities. Right? A lot of people are not looking for clarities in their own life, and they just get frustrated. I hear a lot of that, right? And so a lot of time we're not looking at these questions. For example, Pittsburgh shooting. Okay, it's very relevant, very fresh right now. It's disturbing. It's shaking up the whole country, right? And while we talk about it's a hate crime, but my curiosity when I hear something about that is, what is happening to that person that led him to believe what he's doing is okay, and also led him to believe what he's doing is necessary? Right? I'm curious because if that's not mental health issues, what is that? And I think about Orlando shooting, and I think about Boston Marathon shooting, right? All these people, mentally healthy people don't just wake up and kill a dozen people or two and then kill themselves. Would you agree?
Agreed.
Right. And so something is obviously wrong. While there is a consequence that they need to bear for their accountability for their actions, fundamentally what is happening that led this to where it is? Right? Because if we don't really look at it, guess what? We will never be able to stop this. Right? This will continue happening, and we'll continue having these new stories after the fact, after we lost dozens of people, right? And quite honestly, is having these conversations going to end it? I don't know. But the truth is, if we don't do anything about it, for sure nothing is going to change. Would you agree?
Agreed, 100%. It's interesting because it's definitely not a topic that people bring up, whether you're talking about the suicide, ratios. In the veteran communities, we talk about it all the time because we're so close to the people that have taken their lives, and we're sitting side by side with them from time to time. Yeah. So it's more new, but I don't think the populations outside of maybe the family members are thinking about it enough, and what's going on in the minds of these people that take them down such a dark place on their journey. How do you think that you riding across America is going to help get enough people talking about it?
That's a great question. And quite honestly, when I first started it, I have no idea. Right, I just know I need to do something that is crazy enough to draw attention. Now, bringing awareness, I'll be quite honest with you, is not a one-man show kind of thing. It actually involves the whole community, because guess what? If only Danny cares about this, if only Danny is riding cross country, guess what? Only Danny will care about it. Nobody else would. Right? But what will make this a success is people's involvement, right? And that's one of the focus that I have on raising this awareness on mental health struggles and suicide. One of them is breaking down that stigma, right? There is a huge, big environment that has led us to where we are today from multiple generations, from over decades, over centuries. Like, I'll give you an example. Boys don't cry. Where did that phrase come from? Right. Is it from our parents? Is it from their parents? Is it from their parents' parents? Where did that phrase come from? Right? It's been passing on for so long that is ingrained in our teaching for boys that we need to be tough. Absolutely. We should be strong. We want to be strong. But again, we're at the end of the day are also human. When it actually hurts, I don't know. Donnie, do you have feelings?
No, not at all. I'm completely detached, not emotional, and I get it. I get it, because you get a bunch of veterans in a room, or you just get a bunch of dudes in a room,
sure,
and it's a testosterone fest. Right?
This is not. Yeah. Who is tougher, right?
Yeah, absolutely. And God forbid you're the weak one in the room that can't hold your own, because the alphas are gonna swoop right in, and right. So it's understanding that vulnerability is an okay act.
Say that one more time for me, please, Donnie.
It's understanding that vulnerability is an okay act.
Right. Maybe that is okay, right?
No, it's definitely okay. I think people can't get far enough in life without being vulnerable. If you can't look inside of you and let your emotions out, then you'll never truly understand what makes you tick. And if you don't know what makes you tick, you can never create the life you want.
Absolutely. And you're spot on. But let's talk about our majority of our society. A lot of people don't believe that. Would you agree? Meaning,
I'm going to challenge that a little. I think people believe it. I think they're scared to employ it.
Okay.
Right?
I agree. Why are they scared? What are they afraid of?
People are scared of what they'll find if they open Pandora's box.
Okay. That's a great way of putting it. They're afraid to be honest with themselves.
100%.
Is that fair way to say?
100%.
Okay. And a lot of time they're afraid of open that Pandora's box, and all of a sudden realize that they have living in a fake reality, right? They try to suppress a lot of stuff. But until we open that Pandora's box, what are we really doing? Who are we trying to lie to? If we can't even be honest with ourselves, what are we really doing?
Well, and this just popped in my head as well, as I agree with you. But the other side is one, they don't want to see what they'll find. But two, people are really worried too much about what other people think in general, right?
Perfect.
Yes. So by not being willing and open to let other people see who they are, they can never discover who the heck they are for themselves.
Right. Absolutely. And their fear of rejection, right? They're looking for a validation in other people, right? For example, what I mean by that is when people say something to us, oh, great job. Now we're in cloud nine, right? And then when someone make a criticism, shit, man, my day is like the worst day ever in my life. And people are going through that roller coasters based on external feedback that we have zero control over, right? And we wonder why our life is so crazy. And the problem with that is people are not looking at themselves and what is the story. It doesn't matter what other people say to us. It's really about what the story that we tell ourselves. And I am using myself as an example, right? I had the longest time that I'm looking for other people's validation. And guess what? It's how many people is that killing? And I'm really curious, like, for example, our teens or adults, right? People saying certain things. And that just took them from a good place, all of a sudden crash it to a point that they were willing to kill themselves. How many people is this killing? I don't know if I'm exaggerating or am I onto something. I don't know.
No, I think you're onto something. I mean, I think the human species as a whole has a herd mentality. I mean, we are not necessarily meant to be by ourselves for extended periods of times. I mean, everybody needs a chance to regenerate, and do their things, but we're be around people. And so if we're around people and we're putting our worth in the hands of those same people, right, then we're constantly fighting who we really are because we're so worried of being removed from the herd.
Yes, I agree. Right? It doesn't mean that we don't care about other people. I'm not saying that at all. Right. I hope people don't misunderstand. But what I'm saying is maybe we should have a clear understanding of who we are. If we have areas that we need to improve it, right? But we know who we are versus this is something that I actually experienced when I was riding on this track going through Kansas, the state of Kansas. I was talking to a friend, Nancy, and we started chatting, and I was sharing with her about my struggles all the way going back to when I was 17 years old, joining the Marines. And the reason why I joined the Marines, guess what? My own mother did not know about that until very recently, a week before I left this track back in August. So 20 years, she did not know why I joined the Marines. I joined the Marines because at that time, I was born in Taiwan. I came over when I was 13. My parents got me out of Taiwan early enough so I didn't have to serve in the military, which is mandatory. 3 years later, junior year, I decided to join the Marines. What happened there was I was struggling finding the purpose of life, meaning, what is the purpose of life? Is it just so that I study hard in school, get a good grade on SAT, go to a good college, find a good job, get married, buy a house, have kids, one day die? I was really struggling finding that purpose because if that's the case, I can just walk out the street and get hit by a freaking bus and I would have been done. Then what is the point? And so at that moment, even at that young of age, 16, 17 years old, I realized I needed something that is worth my time and worth dying for. And serving a country, dying for other people, that was good enough for me, even though I was serving a country that is not even mine. I wasn't even a U.S. citizen at that time. Right? And that is something that I decided back in 17. And when I was talking to Nancy, I was sharing with her back in April and May this year when things fell apart. I was questioning all my major decisions, including when I joined the Marines. I was questioning my entire decision-making process. And she said, Danny, it sounds like you're not proud of the decisions that you have made, that you joined the Marines. I said, Nancy, you heard correctly. Not that I'm not proud of the fact that I joined and served, but the problem is I have a huge self-image problem. A huge self-image problem. And a lot of time, what I realized looking back is we have our success in our life and we have shortcomings in our life. And yet a lot of time, I specifically choose to look at and focus on things that I'm not doing well enough, that I could have done more. And so that has become a story that dominates my life, that is basically destroying my self-image while there's everything else, right? Not to say that I need to boast and make up story and tell myself that. That's not what I'm suggesting, but I was a Marine and I served the country and I served the people faithfully, right? And now I'm getting on the bicycle, even though from not liking to sweat, now I'm pedaling through cross country. I have ridden more than 3,000 miles in less than 4 months. And I am an endurance athlete. And I am learning things that I didn't even know that exist in my life. Why can I not choose that stories? Because both of them are true about me, right? With all the shortcomings and also all the areas that where my strength is. And so what my question for everybody who's listening, including myself, is what is that story that we're telling ourselves, right? And we get to choose. We really get to choose.
Yeah, because whatever story we do tell ourselves is exactly who we become, right? And so as we're going about our journey and we're going about our day.
Yes, because what we focus on, again, it's a self-fulfilling prophecy, isn't it?
Absolutely, absolutely. So do you think, I mean, because it sounds like you've had some really impressive breakthroughs as you've gone, through this whole thing. Do you think if other people are searching for themselves, that literally they could jump on a bike, head across America, and figure out who they are?
I invite people with bucket list, whatever they want to do them. What are they waiting for? And one thing that I'm really afraid is one day when I'm ready to die, look back, I have so much regret. And I knew had I not made a decision to get on that bike, even though I don't like sweating, I knew I would look back and say, I wish I had done that. Right? And so the point is not about cycling. While cycling is a great way, very healthy way to cope, very extremely healthy way, because what it produced in terms of chemical wise. But, could it be cycling? Yeah, sure. Or could it be just gardening, right? Or could it be just reaching out to people and be them? Because I think people are afraid of being themselves. And we're constantly doing things, try to please other people, and we're constantly looking for that positive feedback that we're living our life with. We're in that shackle. I don't know if people agree or not. We're living in other people's shackle that it's literally killing a lot of people, right? For example, I'm just going to put it out there, like LGBTQ, it's a very vulnerable subpopulation. And a lot of time they're scared, and I understand why they're scared. Not that I have any experience, right? But I can see their fear of what? Judgment, fear of rejection. But then my question is, do they accept themselves? Because that goes back to what I was talking about earlier about that self-image. If we are okay with our own skin, doesn't make us perfect, doesn't mean that we don't need to improve, but at least we can keep going. Is that fair? Right? At least we can keep going and say, at least I know I'm true to myself. I'm not lying to myself. Versus, how many people are having a hard time admitting, for example, when I was going through financial hardship back in 2012, I walked away from a condo, and that ended up being foreclosed. I ended up living in a car with my 2 dogs during winter, November of 2011 to 2012. Winter, it was super cold. And I think one of the things is people are really afraid of who they are, meaning that story is so shameful for me. And I have learned that I need to embrace it because that's what makes me a part of who I am today. Doesn't mean that I'm proud of it, but that's just part of me, right? And my point of bringing that up is how many people have secrets, stories in their own life that they're not willing to share. And I'm not saying people start going out and just air their dirty laundry. That's not what I'm saying. But are they okay with who they are? And I think that's a question that we really need to ask ourselves.
No, I totally agree. And here's the interesting thing is I truly believe that you have to go through it to become it. And your
Yes.
story is your success. And the fact that you're willing to share that you lost your condo, ended up living in your car during the winter months, I think that's your strength. That's your superpower, right? Is you've come to grips through something you've gone through, and it's no longer a weakness. Yes. Right? It's now just part of your journey, and it's become a strength. And the more you can share and the more you can empower and tell that story, the stronger and stronger you'll continue to get. It's a very cool tool to have in your arsenal.
Right. And isn't it liberating versus always afraid of people finding out? Guess what? You can find out anything and everything about me. That's okay. I'll be the first one to admit. And my point is not to brag about my own personal development, but my point of bringing this up is to encourage all the audience who are listening is perhaps we should take a moment to do some inventory of ourselves. Can we be honest with ourselves? Right? Can we free ourselves from that shackle? Or do we want to continue living in that shadow, being afraid of coming out? Because guess what? Whatever is in our past does not have to define us. It really doesn't, unless we choose to allow it to, right? And we don't have to live in the rear view mirror. We really don't. Whatever's in the past, guess what? That's what made me who I am today. And I have to look back and say, you know what? When things fell apart between April and May, I could say it was a terrible, devastating time in my life. I can choose to tell that story, or I can just say, hey, you know what? It was very painful, but I'm really grateful for what happened, because guess what? If my personal life was just okay, if my business, my work was just okay, guess what, Donnie? Right now I would be in Sacramento being just okay. I would never have a reason in my right mind to get on a bicycle and ride cross country, not only once, and came back and gave away all my stuff and riding again the bigger track, right? And continue wanting to ride more, raising this awareness that probably impact almost everybody that we can possibly think about. I mean, everybody has some kind of story to tell me, whether if it's their personal issue, they have lost somebody, or they know someone who is struggling with mental health struggles or suicide, right? If we look back, had I not gone through I went through back in April and May, we would not have the pleasure of meeting each other. And so for something this wonderful to be where we are today, can I really say back in May that was a bad experience? Maybe that's not fair for me to say that. It's just an experience that made me who I am today.
Absolutely. And I'm curious, I'm sure you probably had a similar experience at some point going through Marine Corps boot camp, because I can tell you the exact day it happened to me. Training day 17, I'm laying in my rack, looking up at the ceiling, going, why the hell do I got to go through this? Why do I got to have some guy yelling at me, making me run, telling me when to eat, telling me when to do all this stuff? And, I'm miserable, right, going through that portion. When I graduated boot camp and they said, hey, you're a United States Marine, the first thought that ran through my head wasn't pride. It wasn't, hey, you did this. It was, that was pretty easy. Did you have a similar experience?
Interesting. That you feel like you did it, right?
Yeah.
It's doable. It's not as crazy. Is that what we're talking about, or am I hearing you incorrectly?
No, that's it.
It was doable.
Yeah, when you go through something, it's in that moment you think it's hard. It's when you get on the other side of it and come out, you realize, it wasn't all that tough.
Absolutely. Or it's doable. Right? It wasn't easy, but it was doable, yes?
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah, and I absolutely agree with you, right? Those feelings are real, and I have people asking me about, are you excited about this achievement, riding cross country from San Francisco to Times Square? I said, quite honestly, I wasn't even riding for the achievement. I wasn't. I'm riding to raise awareness, and quite honestly, this is just the beginning. This is just the beginning, right? And what I realized was back 4 months ago, I was never athletic. I have gym membership. I maybe go to the gym maybe twice a year. What a waste of money, right? But here we are. And if you ask people around me, use a few words to describe me, endurance was never going to be one of them. And it was interesting for me to experience. Of course, I mean, Marine Corps was so long ago. It was more than a decade ago, but definitely that was a lot of endurance back then, right? And in the past 10 years, there hasn't been anything like that. And now,
well, I mean, you said the Marine Corps was endurance, and I'm just going to throw it out there. We were also practicing the art of getting out of anything we could, too. So, you know.
Yes. Right. It's just to survive it sometimes, yes?
Yeah.
Is that what you're referring to?
Absolutely. Yeah.
Right.
Yeah. So,
yeah. And honestly, this track, right, it was for me to learn about that endurance. And honestly, 32 days later, 1,300 miles later, I guess I am an endurance athlete. And not only I did one track, I came back, gave away everything. Now I'm on the second track. 4,000 miles later, I guess there is no question that I need to have about my endurance. It doesn't make life any easier. It just makes me realize whatever I deal with, I can go through it. I can do it one pedal at a time. I can do it 1 mile at a time. Going through the Sierra Mountains, going through the Rocky Mountains. Now we're going through the Appalachian. Right? It's crazy. And that's something that I look at and value a lot on these tracks, because isn't life the same thing? I mean, life is like a marathon. And I know people say that all the time. It's so cliche when I first heard it. But there's a lot of truth in it, right? Sometimes we just need to slow it down. I was over at Columbus, Ohio marathon when I rolled through, just so happened. And I was there. I see people, some walked, some ran. Guess what? It doesn't matter. The point is they participate, they showed up, and they did the best they could with what they got, and they finished, right? And to me, it was really interesting because, some people are more athletic than others. And if we want to get better, get better. I'm not saying, be lazy, underachiever. I'm not saying that. But do we really have to kill ourselves when we're really just not there? Just like life. Some people might be better than others at handling life. Some are more graceful than others. Some just can't get their shit together. Right? And when I say that, I feel like I probably at one point or a couple times in my life fit in that category fairly well, right? But at the same time at least I didn't give up. At least I'm still going. And here we are having this conversation on one of the nation's biggest podcasts, right? Again, if you asked me 4 or 5 months ago when things were falling apart, what was my outlook in my life? None of this would exist. I didn't see these coming, right? And yet I chose to create an opportunity. I presented the opportunity to myself, and I took the opportunity, right? And for me to share that is not to boast about it, but I hope this story really encourage people and say, when you're struggling, I hear you, okay? Just keep going. If you need to slow it down, if you need to walk the hills, walk the hills. There's no shame. I walked a couple hills in the past few days going through Pennsylvania. And if you think about, I already rolled through Sierra Mountains and Rocky Mountains, you would think that I don't need to do that. But guess what? I can pedal those. If I can pedal it, I have to get through it. I'm going to walk it, right? Because at the end of the day, what's more important is the process that we keep going. And as an endurance athlete, I just don't give up. I don't know how to give up anymore. And isn't that what life is about, right? Life is going to be tough, but maybe it's okay for us to keep going, because guess what? We will never know what life could look like, that possibility of a beautiful, amazing, epic life, unless we give ourselves a try, unless we give our life a try. We will never know.
I love it.
No.
So what a cool journey, man. And I honestly, I really enjoy and love how much you've discovered about yourself and are now applying those principles and giving them back to other people. So I know right now you're a couple 100 miles from, Times Square, right?
That's correct.
Yep.
About 270 miles left.
About 270 miles. What are you going to do when you get to Times Square?
Perfect. And that's a great question. And quite honestly, this is something that I often forget, but since you ask, I think it's good for me to slow down a little bit, and perhaps we need to celebrate, right? We need to celebrate what we have done with our own life. And that's something that a lot of us forget, including myself. But also part of it is I want to continue raising this awareness because this big environment change is not going to be, honestly, I'm not going to solve the world's biggest problem single-handedly on this track. And so the goal is to get on perhaps Good Morning America or some national audience that we can get the message out, because the fact that we don't talk about it doesn't mean that these things are not happening, doesn't mean that people are not struggling and dying, right? And the longer we wait, the more life we will lose. Now, I will say, I hate to say this, we won't be able to save everybody. It breaks my heart, right? Everybody has their own choices to make. But I think it doesn't take away the fact that we keep doing what we're doing on raising awareness, and perhaps we can help people, for those people who may or may not need the message right now, and have that in their head, so when they need that message, that they have something to draw from and say, you know what, maybe I do deserve a better life. Maybe life is very shitty right now, and maybe I need to take a little bit of ownership. Maybe I need to ask for some help. Maybe I could experience something that is amazing, that is epic, that is beautiful. And guess what? Killing myself is not going to help, and that I am important, and that I need to learn to take better care of myself. And you know what? This whole thing about stigma, this whole thing about other people look at us, that self-image, you know what? Maybe you have some choices to make. And maybe we can live a life that all of us, when we're a baby, yay big, right, in mommy and daddy's hands, we all wanted to grow up with some kind of inspiration. And somewhere along the line, we lost that dream, right? And perhaps it's okay to dream a little bit. Doesn't mean that it will be easy, but maybe it start with some dreaming and take massive action after that, right? And, this is a lot of massive action on my part, trying to make this happen on the bicycle, and I will be the first to admit, there are struggles, that there are a lot of helps that I ask, right? Because it's not something that I was trained for over the past couple years, right? And again, what do I have to prove? And what am I doing this at what expense? Yeah, so I'm really humbled, to be able to spend time with you, Donnie, and share a little bit of what I have experienced in my own life. It might or might not fit everybody, don't know, but I think one thing I do encourage people is to really ask themselves some hard questions. Be honest with themselves, and perhaps we might be able to find some clarities.
Well, and I hope you get on the Ellen show, and the reason I hope you get on Ellen's show, because now you can tell her that you're just doing what Dory does, except instead of swimming, you're riding, and maybe your whole just keep riding. No, that's awesome, brother.
Absolutely.
I gotta tell you, man, it has been an honor to have you on the show. I love what you're doing. I love your tenacity to stick through this. I hope that the people tuning in are hearing the words coming out of your mouth, because you are uncovering a whole new level of yourself and teaching people a roadmap of how they can discover themselves, which is just a very, very, very cool thing. I know you're doing this to raise awareness for the suicides and the first responder taking life. How do people support you? How do people reach out? How do they say they want to back you, or maybe donate funds or time or money, or maybe a place to stay along your route, something to help you on your mission?
Perfect. So if it's okay, I will send you some information, Donnie, that you can share on the show.
Absolutely.
I do have a GoFundMe page, and I will make it very clear that right now I don't have a 501c3, and I don't have a foundation that I'm partnering to write with. So the fund is going to help supporting me continue raising awareness. And also I do have a Facebook page that allows me to share a little bit of what's on my mind, and I'm working on that so people can see the progress. And I definitely love shows like this, because I have noticed something about myself is when I have a conversation, I can speak a little bit more freely versus me being in front of a camera by myself doing talk. I just don't know how to do that. And if anybody knows any shows, for example, Ellen's show or Good Morning America or Oprah's show that can connect me with, I'm humble to have the opportunity to be that voice for those people who are struggling and let them know that they're not alone, that they deserve better. They have to take actions, but they deserve better. And we can all do it together. And I'm here to be the first one to open up myself and be vulnerable if that's what it takes to create that safe environment. With me, there is no stigma. And it's important that we remember to take care of ourselves and watch what we're saying to ourselves. What is that story that we're telling ourselves? So, yeah, Facebook and GoFundMe, I appreciate it. And the plan, I don't know if you asked me that earlier, but my plan is actually going to fly to Europe sometime in 2019. And I'm going to continue pedaling east through Europe, Middle East, and Asia. And the plan is to actually get to Japan by July 2020. And the significance of that is, one, now we're riding from Pacific to Pacific. And two, is that's actually where Olympics 2020 going to be.
Oh, all right.
And my curiosity is, what would it look like if we have the Olympic committee to stand with us and raise awareness together? Because the reason why I brought that up is because I've come to a realization that mental health struggles and suicide does not discriminate anybody. It doesn't matter if we have money, no money, male, female, if we're lazy, or if we're overachievers like Olympians. It does not discriminate anybody, and nobody's immune to it, right? While in Olympics, a lot of it is about competition, but also they bring so much hope and inspiration for so many people, which is exactly what we're promoting, hope and inspiration in life. And yet, I know, just like us, some of the Olympians actually struggle with their own life, right? And so what would it look like for the Olympians, former Olympians, Olympic committee to stand up with us and help break down the stigma? What would that look like?
That's awesome. Brother, keep riding, man. Keep doing your thing. I see big things coming down the pipes for you. You know, it's amazing what one guy and a bike can do, man. So keep getting after it. Keep sharing your story. And I look forward to continue following you on your journey. Thanks for coming on and doing this, Danny.
Thank you, Donnie. I appreciate it. I'm humble.
Guys, really thank you for listening to this episode. I really appreciate it. It's a lot of fun putting these together. I wanted to make sure before we get out of here that you knew what we were doing with social content. What we found was because of the podcast, we have a unique way of helping you get your social content out on a very easy way. What we're doing is we're interviewing people. And from that interview, we will capture a lot of information that will then be turned into videos, memes, articles, all things you can use for your social content. I know, like for me, one of the biggest struggles I had was, what do I put out there? What do I say on a regular basis? Well, we'll help do all that for you. So if this is at all of interest to you, reach out to us and let us help you grow your social media channel. I can tell you I did this for my business, and my social media is completely taking off. My Instagram, since I started doing this, jumped to over 10,000 followers, and it continues to grow. So if this is at all of interest to you, check the bottom of the show notes for the link that says, "Get my social content done right now."